All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mobile World Congress 2024 here in Barcelona. We're here in the JMA Connect studio, and we are having a great time here. It's day 3 of the show. A lot of excitement and buzz around the entire show floor and here in the booth. A lot of partners from everything from the macro infrastructure to venues down to private wireless solutions, and a lot of new technologies we're talking about. But we're not doing it alone. So today we're going to be joined by Patrick Halley of the Wireless Infrastructure Association. And we're going to talk about what they're doing and how we're bringing the infrastructure off the tower and into different environments and working with the partners from a little bit of the technology, but a lot about the policies, the workforce, and a lot of the other issues that need to be tackled in order to address these solutions. So I'd like to welcome Patrick to the stage.
Thank you, Kurt.
And could you just introduce a little bit about what the Wireless Infrastructure Association does and your role in this 5G and Open RAN system eco?
Yeah, happy to do it. It's great to be here. It's great to be here with you and JMA, one of the truly great American wireless companies. We're so happy to have you as a member and love working with you all. So WIA, the Wireless Infrastructure Association, our goal is to do what the title of this presentation is, which is to enable connectivity everywhere. So every person, every organization, everything connected everywhere, all the time. That's our goal. And the way that our role in making that possible is by working with companies like you, by bringing together all of the different players in the entire wireless infrastructure, the name is fairly descriptive, ecosystem. We do that by representing the companies through policy and advocacy in Washington, at the FCC, before Congress, at the FAA, you name it in terms of the federal agencies, all of which have an important role in enabling connectivity everywhere. We do it by working at the states, with the state legislatures. You know, in the US, the rubber meets the road at the state level on a lot of wireless issues. We do it by convening, bringing the people together from the different sectors within the infrastructure ecosystem, training and education, et cetera. And we truly do represent the full wireless infrastructure ecosystem. When I think about the I in WIA, it's literally everything, right? From the tower down to a small cell on a street lamp or a utility pole, to the DAS system or private wireless system inside of a venue, to the fiber that's connecting all of that and making it work, even going all the way back to the data centers that are powering the entire system. So that's what WIA is. It's truly bringing all of that together and trying and representing them through policy and advocacy, training and education, and bringing that convener that brings everybody together.
Thank you, Patrick. And it's really been important, particularly as we're getting into new uses of the technology, to get into different venues and moving that infrastructure into different environments. And as we get into different uses and different vertical industries in particular, we have to bring in those different types of ecosystem partners, and the infrastructure is getting more shared in that you have the commercial operators operating, and then you have the private operational use cases that are working, and that's really bringing different type of partners. So in your membership, how are you seeing that blend of what used to be traditional telcos and these new verticals and the types of companies that are coming into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so when we talk about connectivity everywhere, we mean it. And so whether you're a consumer in your office or whether you're a manufacturing plant, you're an enterprise, you're a university system, you're a hospital system, you're a farm in rural Iowa, right? You have to have that connectivity everywhere. And you need all of those different components that I was talking about. So yeah, you need the wide area coverage, right? From a macro that's going out 2-3 miles and giving general coverage. But to truly make it work, you need to have you know, the technology companies like yourself, right? Or our other members who are doing in-building connectivity. And a lot of that is truly a unique sort of neutral host shared infrastructure model. And I think a lot of our members are embracing the fact that there's a lot of different ways in which you can make that connectivity happen. But I'll tell you, literally everywhere we go. So one of our members is John Deere, for example, right? And so agriculture is 100% one of these use cases where they're looking to have a connectivity solution everywhere, right? In the middle of nowhere, So that's one use case. I used to work a lot with higher education in my prior life, right? And so when you're talking about colleges and universities, they need a solution, right, for their students wherever they are, on the campus, walking around, and in the engineering lab, right? High schools, right? All of the high schools at this point have to be connected. It doesn't work anymore to go to public school or private school at the K through 12 level without a really good connectivity solution. And I think what you're seeing is a lot more of the educational institutions at every level are looking at, well, what are the options I have available to me? How do I know it's always on in every corner of the building? How do I know it's secure, right? And they're starting to look at private wireless solutions. And the healthcare, my wife is a doctor. My wife is a pediatrician at Children's National Medical Center in Washington. And all of the CIOs and CTOs of these healthcare institutions are now thinking about, well, how do I get connectivity in every single corner of my hospital? How do I get connectivity for the patients and the families who are there, but also for the nurses and the doctors and the systems that they're using? And so we're just seeing a lot of different applications and companies and technologies come together, in many cases using sort of that neutral host shared model. But really, honestly, anywhere you look these days, that's becoming part of the discussion.
Yeah, agree. And we're seeing that particularly as the carriers and there's more frequency bands, higher frequency, which has less building in coverage, and that's where they're doing 5G. We're having to come up with new ways to do that. We're using for JMA in particular, where we have this is talked about Mobile World Congress Americas with Caesars Resorts, where they're actually using private wireless infrastructure, which is where they started, and found that they can bring the signal, the carrier coverage from a couple carriers into the building, and it's really becoming shared infrastructure. And organizations like yours really help facilitate making those connections of the necessary companies to actually solve these problems and change the business model for us. So that connectivity get there, particularly as we move into more capacity, more complexity, but it's got to get simpler and cheaper at the same time.
Hospitality is another great example, and the Caesars example is great, right? And we're doing all this without wires now, right?
Right.
So we're saving money. We're making it easier for the hotel industry to do what they need to do. We're improving the customer experience. And then with like your technology, you're then enabling multiple carriers, right, to connect. And so whatever the consumer is, whatever carrier they have, they're getting that great consumer experience because of the technology that you're enabling, which is great.
So what are some of the policy things that you're either working on or you think are coming as we're moving into this more complex environment of public-private networks coming together, which we're fusing, but we've got a lot of more stakeholders involved, and with more stakeholders come more challenges in the rules and regulations. So what are some of the things that WIA is tackling for your members?
You're gonna have to tell me when to stop, because I could just keep talking about this for a long time. But yeah, no, listen, our success in 4G and now into 5G, it's a combination of innovative companies like JMA and a lot of other companies here at Mobile World Congress investing a lot of money, constantly innovating, but also it has to be, and it has been, as a result of a partnership with government. Right? We didn't lead the world in 4G simply because we had the best technology or the best companies. We do. But we also led the world in 4G because we had smart policies. Right? We had spectrum policy that was forward-looking, constantly looking for new spectrum, figuring out how to use the spectrum in the most effective way, right? Making thousands of megahertz of spectrum available over the last 10 years was critically important to our success. Similarly, we were smart about permitting. We, as a country, Congress passed a law in 2012, and then over the next 8 or 10 years, the FCC implemented a whole bunch of really smart policies around streamlining the process so that people could start deploying technology faster, making sure the rules made sense. Like you wouldn't set up rules to put in a DAS system or a private wireless system and make them the same as building a macro tower. That wouldn't make any sense, right? Well, we were smart about it. And we created a regulatory environment and a business environment that was pro-investment, pro-innovation. That work that we did with government over the last decade or so is one of the reasons we've been so successful in 4G, and we are being successful in 5G as well, and will continue to be. So that said, like our success going forward as a country and as an industry, it's not guaranteed, okay? If we're not smart about our spectrum policy right now, looking forward over the next 5 or 10 years, we will not have the same success that we did. So WIA spends a lot of time working with our carriers, working with members like JMA who are doing things with CBRS and unlicensed, and making sure that we're looking out over the next 5, 10 years on spectrum policy. We could talk more about that if you want in terms of some of the details. Same with permitting. There's still some pushback, right, depending on, especially at the local level, around the permitting process. Our objective when it comes to permitting and when it comes to getting access to buildings or building a new tower or putting a small cell up on a utility pole is that whatever the permitting requirement is, it should be predictable, it should be proportionate to the project, and it should be timely. These seem like very reasonable things to me. I'll say, and we have a pretty good relationship with local governments at this point as an industry. That's taken time to improve because the local governments at this point are seeing the benefits, right? When you install a network, everybody benefits and they can feel it, right? And so the local governments absolutely want that technology deployed, but we still do have some, challenges. And so we got to be really smart about permitting policies. There's a law in Congress right now called the Broadband Deployment Act that's passed the House Commerce Committee. It's something we've been advancing, but really puts into law and strengthens some of the things that the FCC's already done to make it easy to deploy wireless technology. I could keep going on and on. The FAA. I mean, we spend a lot of time with the FAA because anytime you want to put infrastructure up on infrastructure that's anywhere within a near an airport, for example, you have to get the FAA to approve it. Well, what is WIA's role with the FAA? Well, we had a backlog of like 8,000 applications that they hadn't approved. I won't get into why. They were just kind of stuck. And so we said, this is the value of an association like WA. Of all of these companies that are out there, carriers, tower companies, et cetera, give us your list of problems, and then we'll go work at the FAA. We took a backlog of 8,000 applications, knocked it down in July, down to 0 in October. And that's the kind of thing where we have to work with government to make sure that they're, doing things that streamline the process for our industry. There's a lot of things going on at the FCC right now, too.
I agree that sometimes the voice of one is more powerful than the voice of many if we get it all on the same page.
If we can aggregate it, yeah.
Yes, and that's certainly a value that we've benefited from as we've moved into these new areas, new technologies, new solutions. So at this show, I mean, you can't ignore things like AI, and there's a lot more automation of the networks. There's the how the systems are going to operate, and with JMA, we're building systems to keep up with that and take advantage of those new technologies. But telco used to be a very deliberate thing, right? Plan, stuff, and now it's getting a lot more dynamic, and what's services are available. Do you think that the industry is ready, and the people on the other side of the policy table are ready to handle some of those challenges and the complexity of the automation that's going to happen, and some not to be deliberate, to be very reactionary or proactive that the networks are moving towards?
Yeah, so certainly artificial intelligence, AI is having its moment right now. AI has been being used in our industry, in our sector for years now, right? But there's no doubt that, especially after ChatGPT and it became a very consumer-focused technology, that it's gotten a lot more focus by government and by the media. Here's what I hope with artificial intelligence. There's no doubt that carriers, especially when they're spectrum constrained, are using artificial intelligence. And companies like you are going to be using artificial intelligence to optimize the network, where you build it, where you put new infrastructure, right? How you use your network. It's absolutely being used to improve the customer experience from a customer care perspective. What I hope is that AI for our industry is just seen as a tool, right? Because it is. It's a tool to enable our businesses to do what they do better. And so as the government looks at it, certainly we need to look at, and every day there's a new hearing on artificial intelligence in Congress, I feel like, or some meetings being announced, right? And that's good. We should look at it because we want to harness the benefits, and we want to make sure that potential challenges associated with AI are addressed as well. But for our industry, it's absolutely a tool. I think the government recognizes that it's a tool to make us do our jobs better. What I hope is that we don't get into a world where that we sort of turn towards a more regulatory approach that potentially stifles innovation, that would be a bad outcome for our industry. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's too important, and I think the regulators understand that.
Yeah, agree. And then we're seeing that as we're moving into more vertical with private networks, that we're now in the healthcare industry versus sports and entertainment versus Department of Defense. And they're going to use these new automation technologies in different ways, and they're going to bring in different policy and regulatory that intersect between these industries and probably more broad, and particularly as we move to Open RAN networks, where we're able to open up the systems to interface with these other technologies, which is a big part of what we do. So another part that WIA really focuses on, besides the policy, is workforce development. And if you can go over a little bit about what you're doing and what you see as the challenges in the workforce development as we move to 5G, open networks, more IT-centric type of solutions. I mean, it's, as we talked previous to this, you're not just training tower climbers anymore, right? It's a whole new set of skills that we have to be ready for.
Well, even the tower climbers, when they're going up to the top of the tower, it's just not just taking a wrench and screwing a bolt in, right? It's very complex. The radios are complex. Making sure that the infrastructure on the tower, for example, it's not just a job of installing it, it's installing it right? And so making sure that it works correctly. But yeah, listen, we think that workforce development is super important, right? We want to make sure that we have a workforce that's well-trained and that understands the technology, and that we have a sufficient workforce, again, looking out over the future, 5, 10 years, that understands how the technology works. And so we look, again, across the entire ecosystem. This is what the best part about my job is I can see the whole thing. Yeah, you do need the people who can physically install the towers and the small cells and the DAS inside the buildings and everything else. But you also need people who understand how the system works, right, from a technology standpoint. And so we spend a lot of time through apprenticeship development. This is, earn while you learn, on-the-job training, where you have a job, either maybe you just started a job or you've been there 10 years and you want to upskill to a different aspect of what that company's doing. So we've got about 5,000 apprentices that have gone through our program, over 100 companies participating. And then we also have our own training and education program. But to your point, it's not just, the physical infrastructure, it's all of the different jobs associated with making that technology work. And we're also increasingly working with state governments. States, I think what we're starting to see is workforce development within states, which has not historically focused on telecom or communications. Right. It's focused on manufacturing and that type of stuff. And now we're seeing the development of broadband offices across the states. And we're seeing a marriage of government and workforce, between broadband leadership and workforce leadership within the states, which I think is a really important development. The last thing I would say is we're starting to try to reach out to people at an earlier stage, at the high school level, right? Nobody wakes up as a junior in high school and says to themselves, I'm going to be a broadband professional. But they should, right? It's a great industry. We've got so many different jobs, from legal, I'm a recovering telecom lawyer, to engineering, to construction, to operations, and so and veterans, thank you, are also a really important resource in our country that are well trained and can also come in and do the jobs in our industry. And in fact, they have a lot of really great training from what they do on a day-to-day basis that really applies really well. And so we're trying to bring together transitioning veterans and their spouses to find job opportunities as well.
Wow, that's great. And that's such a service. And I think you make a great point about the states, because as we come off the tower from national networks, right, and then it could be nationally applied, or 3 or 4 carriers, so everything's kind of standardized. We're now moving into all these venues and vertical industries with private networks, and that really pushes the training and the education down to a more local or vertical specific aspect, which is something culturally we have to change in the industry. So we really appreciate your leadership in doing that. And also we're moving at more IT centric. Right, we're other technologies. It's software, commodity hardware, and now we're bringing in things like satellite. And we talked a little bit about AI. And I was at your event last night that you had, a great event here in Barcelona. Went too late as usual, but that's par for the course.
You left after I did.
Yeah, okay. Yes. And we have plenty of pictures. Check social media. They'll be there, cleaned up, censored. But what surprised me and really put a dot on the I and cross the T last night was the diversity of companies. There
Yeah.
were satellite companies. There was people that are doing fiber that, and some people come into your event weren't even, direct members, right? That wanted to talk and listen to other people. So, I mean, it's,
Well, so
how
that
do you blend all that together?
that goes back to what I said earlier, which is when we talk about the Wireless Infrastructure Association, when I talk about the I in WIA, it is very broad because there are so many different forms of infrastructure that are necessary to enable that consumer to have the experience that they expect, and the enterprise for that matter, right? So the same infrastructure that is necessary for a manufacturing operation that needs a certain level of connectivity is not the same infrastructure for my house, right? And so, or if I'm, in rural Alaska in the middle of nowhere, maybe I don't have access to a terrestrial network, but maybe I can see a satellite. And so we're starting to see a lot of direct-to-device, satellite-to-handset development. In fact, the FCC has a proceeding that they're going to vote this month to enable, they call it supplemental coverage from space. But all of that, right, to your point, is necessary. And so, again, whether it's private wireless CBRS networks in a building, whether it's a private wireless network using licensed spectrum, whether it's the fiber that connects it, the satellite down to the device, that whole ecosystem has to work together. And I think it is increasingly working together, recognizing that there are certain entities who are better positioned to do certain things. But our goal is always looking towards the consumer to make sure that they really do have that connectivity everywhere, and enabling as many solutions as possible in a really cohesive ecosystem.
That's great. Now, you have an event coming up in May.
We do.
Which is, can you describe a little bit about that? Which is really an accelerator for what you just talked about.
Yeah, it dwarfs this event.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's not true. No, we'll bring together about 4,000 people in Atlanta at our trade show called ConnectX, which is really what I just described, but in the form of an event, right? So it's all the carriers together with companies that are doing private wireless, companies who are deploying O-RAN technology, the tower companies, the small cell providers, the fiber providers, some satellite. We have a small sat forum one of the first days where we're talking about satellite issues.
Wow.
And so that's really a great event where you bring together the people who are deploying the networks and operating the networks, who are innovators, who are designing and developing new technology, but also with all of the services companies and construction firms that ultimately you all and the carriers and the tower companies are actually contracting with to do the work. So it's really the one place in the world, especially in North America, where all of that comes together in one event.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you all there.
It used to be known as a tower show, but it's not. Now it's known as I've been doing, a connectivity show.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the
So how do we
Connectivity Expo.
Yep.
That's right.
Exactly. As the name implies. So, okay, great. So, we'll start to close out here. At the show, you've been here a couple days. Any big takeaways from Mobile World Congress, what you're seeing? For folks that haven't been here, what they should, what you gleaned and you would like to share with them.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest takeaway is not any one thing, it's everything. And by that, I mean you come here and you really see what a vibrant, innovative industry we work in, right? And so you see not what we're doing now, but what the companies are developing and designing for 5 years from now. And it's incredible. And so I always just walk away feeling so optimistic about the industry and where we're headed. Going back to the policy side, when I hear our regulators sometimes talk about fiber to the home as future-proof, and therefore we should only spend money on fiber and not wireless, and then I come here and I say, you're out of your mind. This is the most innovative industry there is in the entire world, and we're constantly evolving. Think just a few years ago what we had versus what we had now. I can walk around the street now, downtown New Orleans, where our show was last year, do a speed test, and I've got 2 gigabits per second on my wireless phone. That's incredible, right? And so when you come here, you see that there's just this constant innovation. And private wireless it's happening. You know, everywhere I go, I'm seeing different examples of private wireless connectivity and the capabilities that it enables. We're talking about network slicing. People were talking about network slicing before. People are really talking about network slicing. People were talking about O-RAN before. People are really talking about O-RAN before.
Oh, really doing.
Yeah, it's happening, right? And so when you come here, you just really you feel invigorated just by the sheer amount of innovation that's going on in our industry, and you just know it's going to keep happening. And for me, it's not any one thing, it's everything.
And you're launching a new working group or initiative within WIA to focus on the heterogeneous networks in building, which
exactly. We're going to be launching an in-building forum where we're trying to, again, power of our association, convening leaders like yourselves in that space, really talking about the value of it, promoting the importance of in-building connectivity, and the different ways in which you can do that with healthcare, transportation, enterprises, venues, education, all of it, agriculture, because we do think that promoting in-building connectivity is important, and we think that it's going to be one of the most important aspects of our wireless future.
Yeah, and not just bringing private wireless, but bringing in, now that we've kind of cracked the code to bring neutral host.
We love neutral host.
So we can get shared infrastructure, change the economic models. We're starting to see that in spades with our products, our technologies, and and the deployments. And it's really been a great help to have industry associations like WIA that are driving that innovation and those connections. Like I said last night at the event, I mean, the diversity of people and companies, so much different than it was just a few years ago. So with that, Patrick, thanks so much. And your team is always fantastic, responsive. I don't know how you do it with a mighty, you out punch your weight. The WIA does, and you're a great supporter, and you're really helping drive the industry, so thank you.
Well, I really, truly do feel lucky. I feel like Lou Gehrig, the luckiest man in the world, right? Because our industry is just so incredible, and it's so important. And the last thing I just want to say is, people walk around with their cell phone, and they think it works by magic. It doesn't. It works because of companies like JMA who are building connectivity where they can't even see it. Right? And so my job at the end of the day is to really just remind policymakers, remind the media, remind consumers that this technology is so vital to what you do every day, but it's made possible because of the investment and innovation and just sheer work that you all do, building and operating in the infrastructure that it all depends on. So honestly, thank you for the work that you do as a company as well.
All right. So that'll do it for this session, Off the Tower. Delivering connectivity everywhere here at Mobile World Congress 2024 in Barcelona. And we will see you on the airwaves, connected everywhere here soon. And from Barcelona, hola.